Welcome back, you beautiful people. It is your feel-good breakfast show, so we're delving straight into the world of tech. Just as TikTok seems to be on the verge of becoming popular around the world, Vine, the once popular social media network owned by Twitter, they've relaunched themselves, this time around coming through as Byte. Now, what makes these apps so significant is what we want to find out. And what can we expect from social media in the future? What's that landscape looking like? And our friend in tech, Brian Smith, he's here this morning to help us explore. Brian, good to see you. Good morning.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back.
So let's start here, Brian. Remind us what Vine was, because I do have a very faint memory of that. It was quite a while ago. But also, why is Byte significant? What will it do for us?
Absolutely. So it's not Thursday, but it's time for a throwback. And I think many of viewers might remember the name Vine, or the social media network that was around 2013 all the way to 2016. This was a really interesting idea, social network actually owned by Twitter.
Yeah.
What the idea was to create revolving 6-second videos that could loop. And the intention behind this at the time was to create exposure to talent or share sort of viral memes across the service in a format that was almost entirely visual, which users could log in, like, and share a little bit like they could on Twitter.
Yeah.
And perhaps this idea was a little bit ahead of the curve because Twitter didn't actually have a great idea of how to monetize it at the time. And unfortunately, they had to close it down. What we've seen then since, or really ironically, is the same concept becoming popular now all the way in 2020 with the likes of TikTok, for example. The concept lives on, and now Vine is back as Byte, which is going to be sort of Vine 2, so to speak. It's going to follow on almost exactly in the same stead. It's going to be really interesting to watch how the social network grows.
Yeah. Okay, so we're seeing TikTok really grow in popularity. I mean, everywhere I go, the kids are going wild. They're going crazy over it. How will these two compete? Are they similar in any way?
So the concept is broadly similar, and it's perhaps a new phenomenon for social media, is that really this is built around sharing virality, firstly, but there's also sort of a talent focus on these apps. In that it's not necessarily built around creating connections or large followings, but it's largely built around more isolated viral moments. So what I mean by that is the content usually speaks louder than the accounts that create them do. And that's pretty fascinating. TikTok, although this is a stat from 2018, TikTok doesn't release its own user stats as regularly as we would like. It has about 500 million monthly active users. And the predominant bunch are actually aged between 16 to 24, which has never been achieved before on the landscape of social media. So between these two apps, we're going to see huge competition now between two real competitors in a social media space that hasn't really existed up until now.
The future is exciting for social media. I think what we're seeing now, social media is moving so much into social media experience. It's about giving the user a real rich and solid experience. Is that the future of what social media is looking like?
It definitely seems to be. What we see specifically with what we'll call older social media networks like Facebook and Twitter is that the idea of having your friends on a graph, so to speak, so you have either a graph, a network of connections that are your friends and family, or perhaps Twitter, the people that want to follow your content, is perhaps one that's on the wane. It's not as popular as it once was. And rather what we see, especially with younger audiences on social media, it's more about the virality, it's more about the content and less really about creating large followings or general accounts. It's more one-off moments, and that's going to be really interesting to see how new social networks create experiences around that.
So the experiences are fun, and I think using these platforms provides for such great user experiences, which is fantastic. But, you know, all of these don't go without any political conversations and trouble. I mean, we're seeing some trouble with the US and TikTok. There's a big news story going on there. What's the story there?
Absolutely. So one of the major concerns around TikTok, given that it actually originates from China, it's actually a pretty interesting story. It's a conglomeration of several apps that have come together to form TikTok, and it's based in China. So there's huge friction between the United States government and China over privacy concerns of having this app installed on your phone. So in the US, it's perhaps not as popular as it is in the rest of the world amongst teens and the large bunch of its user base, as I mentioned earlier. However, with the presence of Vine and Byte, what we might see is a true competitor emerge to TikTok, which there hasn't been up until now. And it's going to be really interesting to see the two compete in close proximity.
I'm always so excited and so intrigued by how we see it's one thing at face value when you're making use of the app as a user, but when you go into, I think, the sort of the political conversations and the news narratives that are going on, it becomes so much more interesting. But Brian, you are an absolute rock star in my life and in all of our lives. Thank you so much again. Of course, if you want to keep up with Brian, you can go on bandwidthblog.com. Let us know if you see any interesting tech stories that are worth chatting about. Share them with Brian, share them with us on our Facebook page. Use that hashtag Expresso Show.